Bom dia, bem-vindos ao 31º Festival Internacional de Curtas-Metragens e a mais esta atividade, essa conversa da Conexão USP Kinoforum, que essa manhã traz uma conversa muito importante para a gente, que é a importância justamente do ensino audiovisual e das escolas a pedagogia pós-pandêmica e como as universidades podem ajudar nessa dinâmica de criar um mundo mais justo. Eu estou introduzindo aqui, agradecendo à USP por essa parceria e também explicando que essa conversa vai se desenrolar em inglês, quer dizer, a gente tem professores de vários lugares do mundo, e a gente optou por fazer essa conversa em inglês, porque senão ela não vira conversa, vira uma tradução. Live é um novo desafio, e eu queria convidar a nossa mediadora, quer dizer, queria convidar uma pessoa para apresentar essa mesa, não é a mediadora, que é a Bárbara Evans. Ela é professora da Universidade de York, e a Bárbara é também a coordenadora do Comitê Permanente de Equidade, Diversidade e Inclusão da SILECT. A SILECT é a Associação Internacional das Escolas de Cinema e Televisão. É a Bárbara que vai contar mais sobre a mesa, então eu queria agradecer muito a presença de todos vocês e desejar uma boa conversa que a gente vai assistir aqui pela plataforma.
Hello, everybody. Welcome, and my name is Barbara Evans. I teach at York University in Toronto, Canada, and I'm the co-chair, along with Carla Berry, of SCEDI, the Standing Committee on Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion for SELECT, which is the International Association of Film and Television Schools across the world. Includes more than 180 film schools with regional organizations in Europe, the Asia Pacific, North America, Africa, and Central and South America. SCEDI aims to bring awareness to issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion in a range of areas, including race, ethnicity, gender, class, disability, and indigeneity. And it's composed of representatives from all regions of SELECT, reflecting the urgency and universal relevance and importance of these topics. Today's webinar is the first in a series being developed by SCEDI and is hosted by the University of São Paulo. So thank you to the University of São Paulo. And now I'd like to turn it over to the organizer and originator of this webinar, Esther Hamburger, Professor of Film, Television, and Digital Media at the University of São Paulo. So thank you, Esther, and over to you.
Thank you, Barbara. Barbara is the co-chair of our SCEDI committee, as she said, and this panel originated in a SCEDI meeting because Reggie, who will be here with us soon, proposed that we promoted a series of events. As the University of São Paulo was starting to organize a series of seminars with the International Short Film Festival here in São Paulo, I proposed that we started with this panel here. So I would like to thank Zita Carvalhosa, who is the director of the festival, for allowing us this space. And I would like to thank the Museum of Sound and Image, who we are using their platform for this panel. And I hope that these links and partnerships we are making now, I hope we can take them to the future in our efforts to strengthen social justice and in connection with film and with film schools. Today, we are having, I'm going to introduce now Reggie, who is the moderator of this panel and who idealized this series of events. Reggie is a producer, director for film, television, and theater. He has been awarded a Fulbright Journalist Fellowship, 3 Cine Golden Eagles, named a Sony Innovator, and nominated for 3 Emmys. His film Reason to Hope was awarded Best Film at the 26th Annual International Festival of Black Cinema in Berlin, and he just completed a feature film based on Akutagawa Prize-winning novella Cocktail Party. He also produced and directed Live Your Dream, the Taylor Anderson story that chronicles the impact of the American English teacher who lost her life during the March 2011 earthquake and tsunami in Japan. Reggie, it's up to you now. Bruno, can you include Reggie? Reggie is Theodore live.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you clarified that, Esther. Well, good morning to all in Brazil. It's late morning, almost lunchtime there, and good evening to all those around the world. It's a pleasure to be here today and to launch this first panel sponsored and promoted by Sketty as part of Select. It's for me a wonderful return to Brazil, even just virtually. I presented a film at Festival do Rio back in 2013, so I had a chance to visit your lovely country, and I look forward to the time I can come again. Let me just give you a little context for how this panel began and this whole initiative by Sketty. In May of this year, when the coronavirus was spreading worldwide, there was a lot of, obviously, people were in panic, and we were all talking about what to do, what was going on. And then tragically in late May, George Floyd was murdered in Minnesota. And I think that event, at least for many of us in the African-American community and people of color in America, was an incredible resonating event. And we were all talking about it. And Sketty had a meeting scheduled during all this time. And just as I joined the meeting with Sketty, I had just come off of a conference call with a number of people talking about actionable items that we could do based on what had happened to George Floyd. And I am so happy that while I shared some of my feelings and what was going on in my mind and in a lot of people's mind in America at that time, all of the committee decided we should make a statement, that Sketty should make a statement to express our outrage at this horrific incident and express support for those, particularly people in the Black Lives Matter movement, who were now mobilizing to make their voice known and to make voices known not only in America, but worldwide. And I think the main thing that came out of that statement and out of that meeting was, again, what's happening today, actionable events, that we can all participate in worldwide as educators, as media artists, as filmmakers, and as responsible people to address what's going on. So it's not only about just devices and ways to teach during a pandemic, but it's also addressing what the pandemic has revealed, the inequities all over the world, the legacy of systematic racism in the US and worldwide. And as a result, in many places, the ravages of the colonial past that happened in many, many countries of color. So those effects, I think, are really, which makes everything that's happening now all over the world really an unprecedented time. Black Lives Matter has spread to so many places. When I checked this morning, since May and the murder of George Floyd, there have been more than 4,395 protests worldwide in support of Black Lives Matter and expressing their outrage at what happened in Minnesota. And again, I'm sure all of you are following the news. Just last night here in America, in Wisconsin, yet 2 more people were killed, protesting the shooting of an unarmed African-American man in front of his 3 children in Kenosha, Wisconsin, shot 7 times in the back. So these are the things that are happening, and this is something we all have to be made aware of. And again, as we see over and over again, protests are erupting in France, to protest the murder of Adama Traoré. And even people are saying that even the protests that are extending now into Belarus about their recent election are all symptomatic of this tidal wave of people saying, no more, enough is enough. We have to begin to address what is going on, because it is not just defined by race or ethnicity or nations. This is a movement that we as educators have to begin to talk about and help our students to process and unpack, what's going on. So where do we go from here? How do we anticipate, as we're going back into the classroom now, the reactions and responses of our students? How do we, productively and help them unpack what's been going on? And I think that's why we're on this call today, to come up with some discussions about that, some best practices that we can all share as we return to the classroom, how we can create some normalcy for our students, how we can create a safe space so they can express themselves, and then we can continue the process of learning. So again, I thank you all for joining us today, and I thank you, Esther, and the folks in Sao Paulo for hosting this, and also to the co-chairs of SCEDI, both Barbara and Carla. Those are my introductory remarks. Again, I'm not here to be a presenter. I'm here just to get the discussion started and rolling. So I turn it back over to you, Esther, to maybe we can begin to field some comments and some feelings from people.
I thought you were gonna call our other panelists.
I'm not because I can't see anybody on my screen.
Not here yet. They're waiting to be called.
Okay. Then let me pass the torch and the baton over to Induka, who I do know is on the call because he sent me a chat message. Induka, can I hand off to you?
Hello. Hi,
Hey.
Reggie.
How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. Bon day, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. Very excited to have this opportunity to talk to you guys, and just the exciting yet very troubled moment that we find ourselves right now as teachers, as makers of work, as people who are really, really concerned about how the world works and how we see the world, and how so the profound things that Reggie you're saying right now around the Black Lives Matter movement, around the kind of violent nature of the virus, but what the virus has done to really, really put into stark relief the social inequities, right? What the discourse has always been, particularly here in South Africa. It's interesting that you're saying the idea of going back to class now. It's interesting to trace just how the virus is able to travel, right? Because right now in South Africa, we're in the grips of it, but we already now starting to think about how do we go back to the classroom. But what was interesting for me, and what I'd like us to put on the table, is the idea of social justice in relation to the classroom, because the universities, particularly my university, has responded in very particular ways, in ways that said, well, we're going in a hard lockdown. What do we do to save the academic year? I don't know what happens to other places in the world, but there's this kind of almost a fetish of finishing the academic year, the calendar, right, at whatever cost. So that's the world that we've been navigating here, right? So in a country like South Africa, the most unequal country in the world, you found a situation where we suddenly have to remotely go to do remote online teaching, let alone that the kind of inequality, the kind of context that the students find themselves in their homes, let alone the kind of just the digital divide that characterizes our daily life here. So it will be interesting to hear colleagues how in different contexts, how they've responded. But for me, at least, in my context within the university here in Johannesburg, it has been a profoundly hard time, and a profoundly a really, really tough time, because now all these issues of race, issues of class, issues of they just were brought into such stark relief. So it will be interesting to see how does those intersections work in different contexts and in different schools in the world, and to ask ourselves, particularly as Select, in how ready are we for this moment of rapture, right? How ready are we? Because this, for me, is no longer about questions of diversity that needs to be plugged in somehow into the main agenda. For me, it's about really understanding where the world is right now, and really to ask ourselves hard questions about what we do as relatively privileged people in spaces of higher education, but how do we respond to this profound moment of change in the world? And that's so I'll be very curious to hear other colleagues. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for Nduka for sharing that. And again, I highly, echo everything that you're saying. I had a quote that I meant to close with at the beginning by a person I know named Wendy Silvers, and she says, "This is a watershed moment in history. A reckoning is happening, as well as an opportunity to co-create a new world, a kind and just society." And I think that's why we're here today, to take steps toward that. Could I ask Lillian to join the conversation? Good morning, welcome.
Good morning, Reggie, good morning for all. I'm pleasure for stay here. Sorry for my English is not for so good like yours, but I try. Well, I did a little text. For me, it's better to read for you. And Brazilian society is structured under extreme social inequality, where the racial issue is fundamental. Brazil was the last country to abolish slavery. Most of its population is made of Black women, whose main occupation is black paid and extremely undervalued domestic labor. Black and brown people are 75% of the victims of police killing. Among deadly victims of the coronavirus pandemic, most are Black, poor, and indigenous. This is extremely complex and rural scenario, but one that bit by bit has stimulated social movements. Within the scope of cinema schools, I would like to highlight Forcini's initiative. Forcini is the Brazilian Audiovisual Cinema Teaching Forum, an institution of which I'm a part of its board. Partnering with Socini, the Brazilian Cinema and Audiovisual Studies Society, Forcini has been conducting actions to formulate guidelines to the implementation of diversity politics in Brazil's cinemas and audiovisual schools. We have already mapped the faculty and the technicians board of a significant number of schools regarding its race and gender diversity. Now we started to map the student profile, identifying politics initiatives, research and extension projects, and collectives with focus on diversity and accessibility in audiovisual. But personally, I believe that to think of a post-pandemic pedagogy goes way beyond the establishment of quotas and student support politics in the university, of what I consider it to be a fundamental political stage, one which must be more developed to rush the university's faculty. In Brazil, however, a deeper questioning is necessary, one that goes through criticism of the very academic field and the difficulty we have of envisioning a universe in the service of the Brazilian people. To do so, you have the important challenge of bringing into the universe the knowledge and the knowledge of traditional, indigenous, and Black people, the knowledge of popular culture, not as a study matter, but as co-founders of a new epistemic order, capable of producing a truly egalitarian and democratic audiovisual education. Is this? And now I'm doing class by web all day.
All day.
Silent, quiet.
Yeah, as we all are at this point in time.
And you have one George Floyd for a day. At least.
Wow. So thank you, Lillian. I'd like to turn to Griselda. Are you with us?
Hello, how are you?
How are you, Griselda?
Hello. Well, I'm from the University of Buenos Aires in Argentina. Here we are in a hard lockdown. As you say, Reggie, I think the virus doesn't discriminate, no, but expose our inequalities, no? So I think in my students, the students of the University of Buenos Aires are a diverse students, and I think in this context it's important to think what, how, and with whom we are dealing, no? It's important focus in the context and not teaching like other year and only the difference is that we are teaching by web, online, but all the thing is the same, no? The context is different and we must to think, and it's a challenge to think how, what, how, and with whom we are dealing now. I think here they say, no, stay at home. And I think, well, what does stay at home means for the people who are in context with domestic sexual violence, for example, with domestic abuses, with domestic situation, it's not the same for everybody. And our challenge, I think, is things in context. And I'm teaching from a feminist pedagogy, and the feminist pedagogy is about think in the affectives, in the bodies, in the people with their particularities, and in this time of a lot of instability in all the areas, I think one stability challenge is education. We sustain education by our tools, our webs, from our homes, and it's a privilege for us to do so. But I think we have to think how to sustain this in a different context.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Griselda. Can I switch over to Livia? Livia, are you? Yeah, good. I can't see any boxes, so thank you. Is your microphone on?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy and really excited to be here. And thanks for inviting me, Esther, Almir, and Eduardo. And also, I think it's a great initiative of SCADI in Select Ibero-American Association and the University of São Paulo, and also São Paulo Short Film Festival. Until February, I think none of us would imagine a panel with faculty and students discussing like post-pandemic or how the film curricula could look like. But now it's great that we can do this now. And I can share with you some thoughts about my perspective being a graduate student, even being a very privileged one, because I'm a queer woman, but for Brazilian standards, I'm white, upper middle class, and living in a cosmopolitan city as São Paulo. And we need to know that students now are facing very, very challenging moment, and the challenges are very different for the students. I heard about the students that don't have a connection, an internet connection, a good internet connection to make lives and to follow the class. Also, it's problematic when we talk about queer feminist perspectives, because maybe these students can be in their houses where this kind of perspectives are not good seen or are not like welcome. So it's very difficult for the students to participate in these topics. And but I think we should push for, if you want in the future a new kind of university, if you want to push towards to respond for this moment, I think we should guarantee that new bodies could be inside the university in Brazil. I'm talking about Brazilian universities, which is very white and upper class and elitist space. And I think with this, the diversity of bodies inside the university, we can also push towards decolonizing another perspective. We can include queer, Black, and decolonizing perspectives or theory inside the class. And I think this should be considered for the new future we want. And how Lilian said, new epistemological or knowledge for the universities in Brazil and Latin America. I think we can discuss also this.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lydia. Again, I'm trying to see if there are other, Esther, maybe you can help me. Are there other panelists I have not called upon at this point? Because I went back to the list because I can only see the names that are on screen. Have I touched upon everybody that we had in the panel for today, right now?
Yeah, we had in the previous version of the panel, we had Carla Berry, our colleague in SCADI. I believe she's watching us now because she asked not to be in the panel. Anyway, okay. I hope she's in our next SCADI.
Okay. Very good. Now, what I thought we might do now for about our last 30 minutes that we have of our time here is maybe we could start to talk about, again, some strategies, some ways that we're preparing now to address our students, to talk to our students, and to begin to help shape, again, all of these events that have been happening worldwide. And I agree with Griselda, it's not about techniques, it's not about devices or anything like that. You know, here we are, we're in the Zoom room, or we're in this now web world that is the world that we're going to have to employ to the best of our ability to teach. So I wanted to just put a couple of ideas out there that I've been sort of thinking about in concert with one of the people at Emerson who is tasked with working on these issues for students. And she and I have been having some discussions. And one of the things that she brought up to me is as a way to try to get to the students and get them to sort of open up and participate is to basically acknowledge and realize that for some of our students, they've had to distance themselves from all of the things that have been happening right now, that many of them are overloaded, by all of the events, not only the pandemic, but again, all of these, what the pandemic has revealed in terms of the inequities, in terms of the things around the world that are just not right. And yes, some students have risen up and joined protests and marches, despite the pandemic and despite the virus. Others have not. And I think it behooves all of us as educators to figure out how can we reach everybody? How can we, once we return to the classroom, or if you're in the classroom now, how you can begin to encourage them, acknowledging there may be distance, but if there in fact is distance, how can we now break into that, and begin to shorten that, give them a way to voice what they may be feeling and thinking right now, because this is affecting all of them, whether they talk about it or not. This is affecting all of them. It's a threat perhaps to their future and even to their present right now. And one of the things that we talked about at Emerson was this idea of just addressing how people are feeling right now, and during these events, posing the question, what did you learn about yourself, and what might you tap into in terms of that learning, that you can now use to express your voice, in what ways may that exercise make you more fully present? Or maybe students feel they want to be disconnected right now from what's going on because it is too much. We could ask them, are you staying open to the events that continue to happen? If not, what's getting in your way to stay open and to stay connected and to stay in the present? I could kind of go on, but those are some of the strategies that we've been discussing, I've been thinking about and running through my head. And I'd love for some of the members on the panel to maybe share maybe some things you've begun to do or some ideas you've begun to develop when you're ready to enter the classroom, or maybe you're already there and you started to do some things. Anybody want to pick up on that?
Well, I think that's a very good raising question to make us think. And I think Nunduka has also pointed to this heterogeneous environment we are in with different reactions. And I think Reggie is putting very well this thing. We have people that understand what's going on and go out and manifest themselves. In Brazil, we don't have that. We have like a very scary situation where the popularity of the president raises despite the fact that he's not doing anything to face the pandemic. So we have those very different scenarios. On the other hand, we have a very common and shared world environment with a pandemic that help us see all the inequalities that are structuring our world. So I think that Reggie is proposing a very interesting strategy. And that means asking people in the classroom, what did you learn during all these months of pandemic? What was your experience? And working from there to foster a discussion about these general and at the same time different realities we are living on. I want also to acknowledge that Bruce Sheridan, our president of Select, is watching us, and Carla is also watching us. And they are both greeting us, and we are greeting them. And then anybody who wants to ask questions and make things can send their.
I want to add, like Regis said, I think the open the space to talk about how we learn of this context, but what we learn about this context, but what we how we feel, I think is important too. It's like I think and open the different platforms in and space for talk about it, because some of our students are ashamed of show their houses. They are they don't show their cameras. They don't. They put off their cameras. It's not all the people is feels allowed or open to talk about how feel the feelings or or the difficult situations, because that is the privilege, the place to the possibility to talk, that is a privilege, so it's not so easy. It's not just ask, oh, how you feel, what do you think, because some people feel not allowed to speak or feel ashamed to speak. So I think our challenge as teachers is find the ways to create the space to talk and to create the feedback, and not always is in an open and in a live class. Sometimes it's just write an email, a personal email, for the student. I have thousands of students in the University of Buenos Aires, but I think the challenge is focus in the different ways to reach the others, and it's not so easy. And I think always the voices that we hear is the voices of the privileged one, the ones who want to talk about how they feel, or and what happened with the people who don't talk. I think this is our challenge as educators.
Very well put, Gustavo. Thank you for that. Yeah.
So if I may come in there, Reggie. So the question for us here has been about the very integrity of the academic project right now. How do you think about the idea of imparting, of creating a space where knowledge is imparted, where you have this dialogic creation of knowledge, when you very know the level, how the kind of real politic or the real kind of systemic questions that are confronting us right now, right? What certainty can we still stand in front of a class knowing very well that the distribution of like things, I mean, we might even talk about things like the internet, how it's tough. But in a country like ours, and in a world like ours, it is becoming clearer right now. As I was listening to Lillian about just kind of demographics, I was listening to Livia around the ideas of intersectionality. We know that. So how do we go back with the integrity? Earlier when the pandemic started, there were very not radical, but very sensible ideas that some of the colleagues and some of the formations were proposing, simply saying that because the response from the university was that, okay, we on level 5 now, WHO, this needs to happen. You need to vacate the residences, the dorms. You need to start with remote learning with the internet. We need to find all these kind of bureaucratic responses, right? But what has become apparent, because of people saying, what happens when we reimagine the university film schools, that for this time, what happens when we think about, instead of just shutting the place down, and think about ways that students can be socially engaged with their society, not only students, but faculty itself, right? Like if I'm in Johannesburg, they are all, we understand all. So our questions right now is that how do you move forward with integrity? How do you move forward, particularly in a film school? How do you justify students having paid so much money to use equipment that they cannot use? How do you justify? So these are very hard questions for us. I mean, we could do our best to trying to, because we're asked to reimagine the curricula in quite a short amount of space of time, right? Where we have this attenuated kind of curricula. But at the end of the day, we're a film school offering a professional degree. And so I'll be curious also to hear how colleagues have been dealing with this kind of very practical questions, which leads to these other great questions that we are raising about creating spaces for conversation, creating spaces for, but I'll be curious to hear what has been the kind of experiences from other colleagues in relation to these kind of really, really pragmatic questions about curricula and about just.
Yeah, excellent, Nzuka. Thank you. Livia or Lillian, would you like to comment?
Yes, I want to add a point because just to remember that the listening strategy was a strategy of feminist groups to listen and to create a safe space for share experiences, and we made this in our research cluster Mirada here in University of São Paulo. We made this in the first meeting since the beginning of the quarantine, and it was a great space where instead of discussing theoretical or a text or a film as we do usually, we could share our personal experiences facing the challenge of pandemic. And I think I agree also with Griselda in terms of that I expected a more close relation with professors, or to have this kind of worry about students that can't speak, and because sometimes this is very complicated in some issues or topics, and I think also the pandemic raised the borders issue, as we were confronting about how we should move and we can't move actually. And this, I think we should take some inspiration in Gloria Anzaldúa theory and going towards to think how the university can be this state of transition, or this place where we can experiment more, or we can be connected, trying to combine, for example, theory and practice more, and also remember that this kind of connection, Zoom connection or internet connection of groups, was also a technique of activism, of feminist militant activists, and since the beginning or the second wave, and I think we should be open, and I expected professors to be more open to have this experience that were made before as an example or as inspiration.
Okay, thank you very much, Livia. Mm-hmm. Lillian, could we go to you for a comment? Is Lillian's mic? Yeah.
So we are very impacted with what happened with the happiness, and you don't any things for change the way to study or teach. Like all are waiting for the end of pandemic. Tomorrow, next month, we wait. Particularly, I'm introducing a new kind of knowledge, like the anti-colonial and Afro-diasporic literature for exchange the student and the teachers and all the people who in this case now trying to study in this moment.
Good. Thank you, Lillian. Esther, were there any questions maybe that people have posed via the chat or anything like that that we might take a moment and visit right now? No?
Yes, there are. Carla and Bruce say,
Yeah, I see Carla's question on how we might use our privilege as educators to imagine the next system for co-creating and learning. I know we've heard a couple of comments from the panel on that. Would anyone like to add anything in response to that question? Or actually not question, but more like a prompt. Anybody like to add to that?
I think it's the challenge we are facing now, because when you are in the presence of a class, we always try to involve everybody and to get everybody to talk. We are never. We always have people who talk more and people who talk less. But now, when you are online, this distraction more. It comes up more clearly, and I think it's a challenge for us. And I think the more we can open ourselves to listen and to connect the classroom to the things that are going on around us, because we can't forget, we can't just go on with a normal curriculum when we are in such an abnormal situation. And the thing is how to connect the two worlds, how to connect the curriculum with the things that are going on around us. And as in film schools, we are very much implicated, but we don't know yet how we are implicated. We know that images and sounds are in the center of what's going on now. We became image and sound. We are now image and sound. We are talking to it. We are, instead of having my computer as a window to the world, to quote the Renaissance metaphor for the perspective, our windows are ourselves. I'm looking at my window and seeing myself and my colleagues. So I think this situation is a very deep challenge to film theory and to film as itself. And if we work with an enlarged notion of film to encompass all media, digital media, communication. So I think that the only way for us is to manage to turn our classroom into labs. We have to ask questions. We don't have the answers. And as teachers, we have to acknowledge what we don't know in order to make knowledge advance and to have a more collective experience with in our digital classrooms. So I would say, I mean, that's the kind of questions that I think we should ask, and have always the questions as directing our teaching instead of bringing answers.
Yeah. I often say to myself, and my students, listen more, talk less. I think there's so much we can learn from each other if we're willing to listen, and not, especially for us as educators, and not always see ourselves as, again, that sage on stage, where we have to have all the answers. And I think we're at a time now when we don't have all the answers, and we should be humble, enough to admit that to ourselves, and be open to answers coming from our students, and from many places you would not expect the answer. Bouncing off of Esther's comment, and Duka, did you have something you wanted to share?
Sure. Continue, I'll go after you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. No worries.
I want to share something. Yes, I definitely agree that it's a great challenge how to keep the dynamic of education, but also I think in my opinion, the pandemic context is a great opportunity for us to reveal or to question the productivity logic, we need to be aware that the productive will not be the same thing that was before pandemic. So this is very important to us to be conscious, and I think we should be aware of this also, and keeping pushing for new and creative ways to be connected, because in one side, if we are not able to be together here, of course, I really wanted you to be with me or with us in São Paulo enjoying, but if we are not able, in the other side, this situation pushed us to organizing this panel, and we are able to participate, being in worldwide. So I think it's like we have an ambiguous situation, and we definitely should see in many perspectives. It's just it.
Yeah, I like to add, like Livia said, I think it's fundamental that Livia says think about productivity system, logic, no? And I think our universities, all the universities are part of this productivity system, and is very dangerous for these times, because I think we don't have to think this virus like a purification, like well, after this, in post-pandemic times, we will be better because we had time to think about, it's not so easy. It's a privilege to have time to think about how we will be better. A lot of people, almost in my country, a lot of people have the urgencies. They don't have time to think, They are dealing with a lot of hard problems. So I think we have the talent to think about the strategies, but I think it's not so easy to think, okay, just for the virus, after this we will be better. It's not. I think it's a very dangerous thought. Think the virus as purification, because it's very. I think we must to think. who are with the privilege to think, and what we are doing with this, because I think if we don't have this time to think about this, after this we are not going to be better, we are going to be worse, because after this, for in my country, the 50% of the people will be in poverty. So it's not easy, I think.
Yeah. Induka, you, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted also to, I mean, I'm very enthused about the ideas that this is an opportunity to ask questions. But I suppose is the nature of the questions and the difficult questions that we have to ask of ourselves. It's always easy to defer the kind of to students, and so my question for me that really is at the heart of is, if I know that I'm in a continent that is predominantly young, I'm in a school that is predominantly female and Black, I'm in a world that is predominantly big in relation to capital, in relation to health, in relation to various parts of our life, is predominantly anti-people of color, there's all these structures. So how do I look at the structures that I'm in, like me being the head of a department at a university in South Africa, being part of a regional body of the world of select CARA, which is again the kinds of people in the executive, and how do we ask those hard questions about our positionality in how we reflect back to the problems of the world? Because things have become so blatantly clear, because we have all these discourses around social justice, all these discourses around equity, but the things, it seems to me, and I mean the kind of prompts that this virus has brought, these are the things we've always known, these are the things that we are there, but now it seems to me that we have a very, very great opportunity to ask ourselves really uncomfortable questions around our own positionality and how best we can, in a very, very pragmatic way, within the structures that we are in, within our universities, within Select, within CARA, within SIBA, within how do we respond to the absurdity of the world right now, in very, very practical terms. So this, I don't have answers to this, but for me, this is quite, I mean, I look at the US, I listen to what Lillian is saying around the statistics, I listen to what Livia is saying, I listen to, we kind of know what the problem is here around how the world is working right now. Us as people who work with representation, we work with imaging, who work with all these, I mean, it's wonderful what you're saying, Livia, around the ideas of decoloniality, right? It's wonderful, but again, we're in a situation where we need to recognize that decolonization is not a metaphor. I mean, there's a wonderful paper that Tak and Wayne wrote about that. So how do we move from these points of great discourse to a point of really asking of ourselves really, really difficult questions, and then try to articulate those in our processes, in our meetings, in our seminars, because I think we've been exposed by the kind of violence this pandemic has ravaged in our lives. I mean, right now, in my context, the hard lockdown has really, really messed up people's life in ways that will never recover again, right? There's such a kind of complexity and the wickedness of the problem. So I just wonder that, do we have agile enough systems, agile enough ways of confronting what has become really, really, really very explicit problems in our lives? So I just wonder if we talk about the rapture, we talk about walking through the portal and living, but seems to me like there's lots of hard questions that we need to ask of ourselves in very fundamental ways. And then I think that can also, that level of transparency and self-reflexivity will easily translate into questions of the classroom, the questions of the industry, how the industry that we're working with, how does it understand these issues? Because these issues are not marginal, I think. These issues are not questions of the periphery where we're trying to bring diversity to. We need to problematize the center. The center is problematic. So I just wonder how much agency do we have to do that? Obrigado.
Excellent points, Nduka. Did anybody else want to comment on at all? No? Okay. I just wanted to add, based on something, again, I think Griselda said, I think all of what Nduka is saying and what all of us are saying is that what's clear to me is we can't wait for the end of the pandemic. We can't wait for, is it going to end tomorrow? Is it going to end next week? There has been this paradigm shift now in the world. And in my way of thinking, again, following very much up on what you just said, Nduka, we have to ask ourselves hard questions, and we have to move forward in the world as it is now, because we'll never go back again to anything pre-pandemic. What has happened now has reshaped the trajectory of our lives, our teaching, our relationships. And again, the questions we have to ask ourselves in terms of moving forward. And I think I totally agree with something that Olivia, you said. This is a great opportunity, a wonderful opportunity for us as educators to find ways to do things that maybe we could not do in the classroom in person, that we can do in this platform. I often say to my students that in the writing kanji in China and in Japan, the kanji for chaos is also the kanji for opportunity. And it depends on how you read that kanji and how you apply that kanji. And for me, I think it's the time now that for us, maybe many people see chaos, but for me right now, I'm seeing there's an opportunity that can come from this if we're willing again to ask ourselves the hard questions, about privilege, about all of those things that we know shape and rule our lives as educators. But we've got to take that step on our own at first, and then move from there. Anybody else want to? We've just passed the 1 hour point. We can go a little longer if people would like to add anything, any comments before we close out. Did anyone have anything they wanted to mention? No? I'm reading body language now. I guess not.
I think we are having a wonderful first conversation to be continued, because there's so many different things coming on. There's so many different situations in the same situation. And that's a challenge, to start talking and hearing different voices. We have like the many different voices we have in this panel. So we have different voices, different geographies, and common problems. And I think it's a challenge to deal with it. We have like people thanking us for and congratulating the panelists for discussions. That Jessica Frazão says, and Gui Batista says, thanks Kinoforum for the meeting. Kinoforum is the association that promotes the festival. Before we finish, I don't think we finished, but just not to forget, I want to introduce our panelists, since we didn't do it in the beginning. So Griselda Flessler is professor in design and gender studies at architecture and design at the University of Buenos Aires. She was born in Mar del Plata, Argentina, in 1976. She's a graphic designer and a specialist in communication design theory and master in communication design. Her PhD is in, she's a PhD student in social sciences at the University of Buenos Aires. She's the head of the gender office at the University of Buenos Aires. She's the General Director of Public Voices, a project supported by Coincidência Pro Helvetia, Swiss Foundation for Culture. And she's co-director of Design and Gender project supported by Gender Design in STEAMs from Carleton University, Canada. She has experience of multidisciplinary teaching on gender, which I think it's wonderful. Lilian Sola Santiago is a documentarist. She's a researcher and a professor of audiovisual and a PhD candidate at the University of São Paulo. In her authorial work, she works with the empowerment of Afro-Brazilian empowerment. She has a BA in history and a MA in Latin American integration. And she's part of the Lab Arte Media, which is the lab by Almir Almas, who's my colleague at the University of São Paulo, and who's one of the organizers with Edu Santos Mendes of this series of seminars. And she teaches at the course in the School of Cinema in Salto, São Paulo, and she's a director of the Association of the Brazilian Cinema Schools. And this association, as she said in the beginning, is doing a great job on diversity and a very pioneer job on diversity in film schools in this country. Nilduka Mitambo is an image maker playing in the interstices of urban spatial practices, experimental filmmaker, and pedagogy. He holds a PhD in film and is the head of the film and television program at the Wits School of Arts in Johannesburg, South Africa. He presented an exhibition titled Asymmetries at the Point of Order project space in Johannesburg. And in 2019, the work traveled to Michaelis Galleries in Cape Town. The most recent iteration of the work was presented as an installation performance lecture at the Art Research Africa Conference in 2020. The installation won the National Institute for the Humanities and Social Sciences Award for Best Virtual Art. The video component of Asymmetries installations was selected for the 20th edition of the Video X International Experimental Film and Video Festival in Zurich. Anyway, it would be great to see this installation here. He has many publications too. And Lívia Pérez is a PhD candidate at the University of São Paulo. She's a documentarist, and she has just been in visiting at the University of California at Santa Cruz. And because she's so close, I don't have the rest of her letters here. Do you want to complete, Lívia? Do you want to complete? Well, she has done two great films. One is called Who Killed Eloá? And it's an archive film about this media event that ended in this tragedy in Brazil. This film traveled many festivals, and it's accessible on YouTube. And she also did a feature film called Lampião da Esquina. I'm not sure about the English title, which is about the first gay publication in Brazil. It tells the story of this publication.
Okay, thank you, Esther, and thank you, panelists. Carla Berry, has posed a question before we close today that I'd like to share with everybody. Maybe everybody can take a quick stab at an answer. What steps would all of you in the panel like Skedi to take moving forward? Again, this is our first webinar and one of our first events we're doing. But as we look forward and we look ahead, again, bouncing off of the comments we've all said, well, we're not waiting for anything to end to get started with, moving forward. We're moving forward now. We're straight ahead. What steps would you like Skedi to take for the future? Maybe everybody could just chime in, maybe an idea, at least one idea, one suggestion. Who'd like to lead off?
I think if we had a space or the opportunity to be in contact more often, it would be really nice. And also, I'm not sure if Skedi has kind of numbers about diversity in Latin America. And I think this could be really useful because last month, students of my division, the School of Communications and Arts of University of São Paulo, we signed a petition asking for affirmative actions in our graduate program. And it would be really nice to count on or to have the support of Skedi for this kind of movements, because it's the first step, but an important achievement for the whole division, and to have the support of Skedi would be really, really amazing.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Livia. Induka, Griselda, Livia, anything you'd like to chime in?
Well, it's a little bit hard right now, Reggie.
Okay.
But I think for me, the most central thing is to understand the centrality of the work of Skedi that needs to be within Select. And in some ways, the most ideal practical thing that we should be thinking about, what are the practical, identifying the things that, if we're talking about social justice, if we're talking about diversity, if we're talking about equity, to simply name and within our organization what are those things that are impeding that ideal, and then in very small steps to say in very small practical steps, what do we do about those things within the organization? It's wonderful the kind of possibilities of affinities that can happen, like this conversation that is happening right now in Sao Paulo, and the kinds of conversation that we could be having kind of in the global South kind of framework, but I'm sure it will go beyond that. But I think for me is to really, really be distilling really the kind of practical things that can bring real meaningful change, even however small it is. When Livia is talking about the questions of transformation, affirmative action, how does that translate in the world's biggest school organization of film and television schools? So I'm just saying we just need to really be taking in very practical steps these harder questions around the systems that we have right now.
Thank you, Induka. Thank you very much for that. Griselda, did you want to add on?
Yes, well, I think that Livia said there's a lot of initiatives around open university for diversities and dissidents bodies. So I think we have to build a network to feedback all the experience, because I think we can share and learn each other the different initiatives in the different educational institutions. So I think maybe build a network with some issues, some focusing in, for example, diversity and equal rights. Well, I think maybe it's a good first step for this.
Great. Lillian, did you want to add?
I think Select could help the teacher to think a new deal for the knowledge in audiovisual and film. You need another kind of to think about this. In Brazil, this is very, very important. I think Select can be help to us for this.
Good. Thank you. Strong point indeed. Well, should I be the one to close out the panel, Esther, or should I pass the baton to you to do that?
I don't know. I just wanted to mention again that my colleagues Almas and Eduardo Santos at USP were very important in the organization of this fourth step, and that I wish we go on further with this kind of debate. We are just starting, and you can close.
Yeah, I agree. We are just getting started, but I think it's a great start. So I thank all the panelists for taking the time out from your very, very busy schedules today to be with us. And I think we've posed some hard questions, and I think the nice part is that we're not making any agreements on answers right now. We're letting these questions kind of float and spin for a while, so we come back again. I hope there'll be a follow-up to this panel soon. Maybe we have the beginnings of some steps, some practical steps, some actionable items that will address the issues that we have outlined today, and be a beneficial presence and a source for all of us to put into our work as teachers and into our lives and into our communities. So again, thank you. Esther, again, I'm not the one to push the button to end the meeting, so I don't know how do we do this technically right now.
I think Bruno is with us, and he will turn us off.
Okay. Well,
Barbara is saying things here. Maybe we should read her.
This work would be an amazing way to collaborate. Yes, and giving Susan.
Oh, hi. It says when we're backstage to be ready to join in at any moment, but I wasn't.
Go for it, Barbara.
Anyway,
go for it.
Hi, everybody. What a great panel. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to see you all. I mean, this is one of the things that the pandemic has given us, the opportunity to communicate in ways that we didn't even think about a year ago. They were possible, but we weren't utilizing them. I thought that one of the things that we could do at a practical level, as Duca was talking about, is that we have the real opportunity to encourage and facilitate our students' voices. Because to me, this is the world belongs to our students. The future belongs to our students. It belongs to us as well. But they're the ones that are going to have to really continue. And many of them are in as we say, a desperate situation, but they have ideas, I'm sure. We just start teaching in 2 weeks. So one of the things that I'm hoping to do is really to give assignments that will allow them on film or whatever way, podcasts, whatever they can do from home. Could be written work, whatever, but something that we can share with other students, because I think that we now have seen the possibilities of that kind of sharing that goes beyond traditional, the old boundaries that really don't exist anymore. So I think that we really can facilitate the students' work, that they can share and learn from each other, because I mean, we're like the parents, but we have to kind of let them go at a certain stage to kind of be able to say what they want to say, to give voice to their concerns. I don't even know what they are yet. You know, I know what I think they are, but I think I'm looking forward to getting back to school remotely, even but to hear what their aspirations are, what they want from their education now, but particularly in the future. So I think that's something that SCEDI can find a way to facilitate. I don't know how we can do it yet, but there's certainly the possibilities are there. But thank you very much for this great panel. It was really invigorating.
Okay, thank you, Barbara, for that comment. Is the chat going to be saved, Bruno? Are we able to save the chat?
Yes.
Oh, great. Yeah, but please let's save it, because I think there's a lot of good things in the chat that we couldn't address, and we'd like to hold on to these for a little bit. What else?
Zita Carvalhosa, who is the director of the festival, who opened this space for us, and she's here to close.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Zita. Go ahead.
Just to thank you all. I was just listening it backstage as Barbara, and it was really, really nice. And thank you. Let's keep our students together worldwide. I think it's very important to do that.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And come and join the festival. It's open.
The festival here is a very important space for formation that goes beyond each of our schools, and it reaches young filmmakers and older filmmakers and well-known filmmakers and starting filmmakers in Brazil and in the world.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zita. Thank you.